For this particular problem, we're asked to solve this equation on the interval (0 to 2 pi, not including 2 pi. So let me go ahead and just replace these parentheses with a different colored parentheses so that, and I'll use brackets here so that you can see what we've got. Now, we've got one thing right here, we've got another thing right here, and they're multiplied together to get 0. So using the zero product property, we know that either this guy's 0 or this guy's 0, or they're both 0. So one solution to this is when the cosecant of x plus 2 is 0, and the second solution is when the cosecant of x minus square root of 2 is equal to 0. So let's go ahead and solve these just like we've done the previous problems. So this will give us cosecant x is equal to negative 2, and this will give us cosecant x is equal to square root of 2. Now if cosecant is equal to negative 2, then that must mean that the sine of the angle is equal to negative 1/2, right? The reciprocal. Same thing over here. This must mean that the sine is equal to 1 over the square root of 2, which, when we rationalize the denominator, gives us root 2 over 2. So what we're looking for here is what angles have a sine value of negative 1/2. Well, there's a whole bunch of them out there, but we're only looking at this interval. So the sine is 1/2. It has a height of 1/2 here and here. So this first angle right here is just pi over 6. Okay, at pi over 6, we'd be at a half. Okay, then over here, well, again, I want it to be equal to negative 1/2, so we're not going to use this guy, right? Because this is positive, and this is positive over here. But these two guys down here are negative, right? So this would be 5 pi over 6, but we're not going to use that. So 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6. And then this goes all the way over here to 11 pi over 6. Now you might be tempted to say, well, this is also negative pi over 6. And that's true, okay? So it is negative pi over 6. However, negative pi over 6 is not on this interval. When you think about this interval, think about it like, sorry, that's not so straight, but you get the idea. Okay, so the question is basically, it's like I'm unwrapping this thing along this, and negative pi over 6 falls right here, outside of the range. Okay, so what falls in the range? Well, 7 pi over 6 gives us a negative sine value. So these guys don't give us negative sine values. So we're only going to use these two guys down here. So 7 pi over 6, right? And 11 pi over 6. So these two solutions got generated from this one piece of the equation. So our solution set so far is 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. These two equations these two values satisfy this equation, and they satisfy this interval. Now what about this over here? Well, sine, we're just going to repeat this process. So sine has a height of square root of 2 over 2 here at 45 degrees. And then it also has a height of square root of 2 over 2 at 3 pi over 4. Now it has heights of square root of 2 over 2 if we keep going around, right? But they would fall outside of this interval. Now notice I didn't put them in ascending order, but it's good enough. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I think there's 4 solutions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the graph here. I'll type that in and see what we get. Okay, so we've got cosecant plus 2 okay, and we want to multiply that. Okay, oops, got that extra piece in there. Cosecant x let's see here, minus square root of 2. Okay, there's the first guy, and we want to know when is that guy at a height of 0. Okay, so when is it at a height of 0, and our interval, we'll just make sure our interval is set. So we want to go from 0 to 2 pi. So that looks good. So we'll just click, and we'll get our solutions. So pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. And if we go back, 11 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, pi over 4, and 3 pi over 4. So we've verified that these are our possible solutions. Now, this technique here of taking each of these pieces and setting them equal to 0 is what we're going to use in the next couple of videos, where we're going to do some factoring and then work it out.